Imagine walking through a shopping mall where a full-grown forest is literally growing out of the ceiling above you. Not a green roof with some grass, not a rooftop garden with a few shrubs. We're talking about 1,000 massive trees bursting through concrete columns that punch straight up through 9 stories of retail space. Like nature decided to reclaim the building while people were still shopping inside. This sounds impossible, right? Except it's real. It's standing in Shanghai right now, looking like someone dropped an entire mountain covered in forest into the middle of one of the most crowded cities on Earth. And here's the insane part. They're building a second one right next to it that's twice as tall. So how did anyone sign off on this? And how do you keep 1,000 trees alive on top of a shopping mall? Let's dive in. A mountain in the middle of Shanghai. Shanghai is home to over 24 million people. To put that in perspective, that's more than the entire population of Australia crammed into one city. It's all skyscrapers, highways, and concrete as far as the eye can see. The kind of place where green space is a luxury, and every square meter costs more than most people make in a year. So when architects pitched the idea of building a literal mountain covered in trees in the heart of Shanghai's art district, people thought it was completely insane. But somehow, they convinced them. And in December 2021, after 8 years of construction, the first phase opened to the public. This isn't just a building with some trees on it. The entire structure is designed to look like a mountain range, with these massive concrete columns that stick out at different heights, each one topped with its own mini garden. From a distance, it genuinely looks like nature just decided to take over a building. Up close, it's even wilder. Each column is like a pixel in a giant 3-dimensional grid, and every single one has trees, shrubs, and plants growing out of the top. The whole thing covers 100,000 square meters. That's about 25 acres or roughly 14 football fields. And they called it 1,000 trees because, well, that's literally how many trees they planted on it. But here's where it gets interesting. This wasn't just about making a pretty building. The designers wanted to challenge the way we think about urban development. Most mixed-use projects are sterile concrete boxes that blend into the skyline. They're functional, sure, but they're boring. They wanted to create something that would make people stop and actually look at the building, something that would evolve and change over time as the trees grew. And they wanted to do it in a way that respected Shanghai's history while pushing architecture into the future. 2 mountains, 2 different purposes. The 1,000 Trees project is split into 2 phases, which they call the West Mountain and the East Mountain. The West Mountain is what opened in 2021, and it's the shopping mall portion. But calling it a shopping mall feels kind of insulting because it's so much more than that. It's 9 stories tall and packed with over 90 shops, 12 flagship stores, and 63 different food and beverage outlets. There are terrace cafes where you can sit outside surrounded by trees, fine dining restaurants with panoramic views of the river, and even this rotating food street concept where different food vendors change out every few months to keep things fresh. But what makes it unique is how they integrated nature into every single level. The building is designed on this flexible grid system, which means every store gets access to outdoor terraces with river views. The concrete columns that hold up all the trees also act as planters, and they're connected to an internal watering system that keeps everything alive. Because yeah, that was probably the first question on everyone's mind. How the heck do you water 1,000 trees on top of a building? Turns out they engineered an entire irrigation system that runs through the structure, so the trees get constant hydration without anyone having to manually water them. Pretty genius when you think about it. Phase 2, the East Mountain, is currently under construction, and it's going to be even more massive. We're talking 19 stories instead of 9, and it's primarily designed for office space and a hotel. The original plan was for it to be completed in 2023, but as of now, in 2026, it's still being worked on. When it's finally done, the two mountains will sit next to each other like twin peaks, creating this surreal landscape where nature and architecture blend together in a way that's never been done before at this scale. The trees that change everything. Now let's talk about the trees themselves, because this is where things get really fascinating. They didn't just throw random plants on top of the building and hope for the best. Every single tree and plant species was carefully selected based on a bunch of different factors. First, they had to be locally sourced from the Shanghai region, so they'd actually survive in the climate. Second, they had to look good together aesthetically. This is an art project as much as it is a building, after all. And third, they had to be durable enough to handle seasonal changes. Wind, rain, and all the other challenges that come with living on top of a 9-story structure. They ended up using dozens of different species, everything from evergreens that stay lush year-round to flowering trees that bloom in spring and summer. And here's the coolest part. The building is literally designed to change over time. As the trees grow, the entire aesthetic of the structure evolves. In 5 years, it'll look different than it does now. In 10 years, it'll look completely different. It's architecture that's alive in the most literal sense. The concrete columns themselves are works of art. From a distance, they look uniform, but up close, each one is slightly different. They're designed to look like planters with mini gardens on top, and they extend all the way through the building structure to provide support. At night, the whole complex is lit up with these soft lights that make the trees glow, and it genuinely looks like something out of a fantasy movie. It's one of those things that photos don't really do justice. You have to see it in person to understand how bizarre and beautiful it is at the same time. More than just shopping. So we've established that this is a shopping mall with a forest on top. But the designers didn't want it to feel like just another retail space. They wanted it to be a destination, a place where people would come to hang out, experience art, and actually enjoy being there. That's why the location was so important. 1000 Trees is built right next to the M50 Art District, which is basically Shanghai's version of Brooklyn's art scene. It's a creative hub filled with galleries, artist studios, and cultural spaces. And they leaned hard into that vibe. The building itself is packed with art installations. They commissioned 16 different artists to create pieces specifically for the space, including a 40-meter-high mural inside the elevator shaft. On the southern side of the West Mountain, the building is literally sliced open to showcase this massive outdoor art wall, where street artists from all over the world have created murals, portraits, and installations. It's constantly changing too, with new artists adding to it over time. But here's the part that really connects it to Shanghai's history. The entire site used to be home to a historic flour mill and a packaging warehouse. Instead of tearing them down completely, the architects incorporated them into the design. Parts of the old mill are still visible within the structure, giving the whole project this sense of continuity between Shanghai's industrial past and its high-tech future. It's architecture that tells a story, and that story is about respecting where you came from while pushing forward into something new. The controversy nobody talks about. Now, not everyone is in love with this project. In fact, there's been a fair amount of controversy around it, and it's worth talking about. Some critics have called 1000 Trees an example of greenwashing, basically accusing it of looking more environmentally friendly than it actually is. Their argument goes something like this. Sure, planting 1,000 trees on a building sounds great, but does it actually help the environment in any meaningful way? Or is it just a marketing gimmick to make people feel good about shopping? And they have a point. 1,000 trees sounds like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not really making a dent in climate change or air pollution. Shanghai is a massive city with millions of cars and factories pumping out emissions every single day. 1,000 trees on one building isn't going to fix that. Some environmentalists have argued that if we're serious about sustainability, we need to do way more than just stick some plants on top of buildings and call it a day. But here's the thing. 1,000 trees was never meant to be purely an environmental project. It was always about art, culture, and reimagining what urban spaces could look like. The trees are part of the aesthetic, sure, but they're also about creating a more human-centered design. The architects wanted to prove that buildings don't have to be cold, sterile boxes. They can be living, breathing spaces that change over time and make people feel connected to nature, even in the middle of a concrete jungle. That said, the criticism isn't entirely unfair. There's a larger conversation happening in architecture right now about whether these kinds of projects actually contribute to sustainability or if they're just expensive vanity projects for wealthy cities. And the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. 1,000 trees isn't going to save the planet, but it's also not trying to. It's trying to show what's possible when you combine creativity, technology, and a willingness to take risks. What it means for the future. This same design philosophy has been showing up in other cities around the world. There are similar projects in New York and Singapore that take the concept of mixing plants with architecture and push it in different directions. Some look like giant honeycombs, others like floating parks, and still others like vertical forests climbing up into the sky. The movement is clearly gaining momentum, and people have pretty strong opinions about whether it works or not. Some people think 1,000 trees looks futuristic and beautiful, like a glimpse into what cities could become if we prioritized green space and creative design. Others think it's gaudy, awkward, or just plain ugly. And honestly, that's kind of the point. It's supposed to make you feel something, whether that's awe or confusion or even frustration. It's not meant to blend in with the skyline. It's meant to stand out and start conversations about what we want our cities to look like in the future. Shanghai has always been a city that pushes boundaries. It's home to some of the tallest skyscrapers in the world, cutting-edge infrastructure, and some of the most innovative urban development projects on the planet. 1,000 trees fits right into that legacy. It's bold, it's weird, and it's unlike anything else out there. Whether you love it or hate it, you can't deny that it's memorable. And maybe that's the real achievement here. In a world where most buildings are designed to be functional and forgettable, 1,000 trees dares to be different. It's a statement about what's possible when you refuse to settle for boring. It's proof that architecture can be art, that cities can have personality, and that sometimes the craziest ideas are the ones worth trying. So there you have it, a literal mountain covered in trees sitting in the middle of Shanghai, defying everything you thought you knew about urban architecture. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos. And here's a question for you. Would you want to see buildings like this in your city, or do you think it's just too much? Let me know in the comments below.